and ransom my future and our children that's wrong.
We must take America back. That's right. We have to take America back, and that's why we do things like we do. Why we do shows like this, the National Intel Report on Republic Broadcasting Network. I'm coming to you from the heart of Pennsylvania, the birthplace of American liberty, the state of independence. I'm Peter Serafine. I'm your Thursday host here on the National Intel Report live on Republic Broadcasting Network, Liberty Lighthouse, heard elsewhere like Mojo Radio. And I'm here to remind you that free speech is not free, and that free speech platforms like this one, well, they need your support. You can support them by hitting that donate button on their website, or you can support their sponsors, buy from their sponsors, use their promo codes, those kinds of things. It helps a lot. Helps keep free speech low. Well, tonight we've got two guests coming into the show. I've got I forgot already. Brent Hamachek is coming on. He's from Human Events. He's going to come on about a half an hour from now, right around 6:30. Then at 7:00, we got David Sumrall from StopHate.com, the big January 6th political prisoner advocate. Those two guys are going to both come on and give us a little update about what's going on in their worlds, in their organizations. But I wanted to talk about something that I haven't talked about in a little while, and that is, the Nuremberg Code. I talked about it probably 2 years ago, right at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. I talked about the Nuremberg Code, and I basically said that what they were trying to do was illegal. So I want to go through the Nuremberg Code tonight before we get to our first guest. So bear with me. What was the Nuremberg Code? Nuremberg Code was from the Nuremberg trials after World War II. The Nuremberg Code that was developed was 10 rules. 10 rules for human experimentation. So these were rules that were set forth by international judges in an international court. So after they heard all the cases and heard both sides of the pro-human experimentation and anti-human experimentation, these judges came together, and their statement the paragraph right before they give the 10 rules is: the great weight of evidence before us is to effect that certain types of medical experiments on human beings, when kept within reasonably well-defined bounds, conform to the ethics of the medical profession generally. The protagonists of the practice of human and experimentation justify their views on the basis that such experiments yield results for the good of society that are unprocurable by any other method or means of study. All agree, however, that certain basic principles must be observed in order to satisfy moral, ethical, and legal concepts. Okay? That all clear? I thought it was pretty clear. That's the statement of the judges at the start of the Nuremberg Code. They admit human experimentation is very valuable. It's kind of ugly, risky, scary, and there should be rules around it. So these judges came together and they came up with 10 rules that all medical experiments on human beings are supposed to follow. Now, if you want to call in and join the program, join this conversation, you can do that by calling 512-248-8252 or toll free 313-9443. You can also join the conversation in the video chats if you happen to be watching in video format on YouTube, Facebook, Rumble, Twitch, DLive, Twitter, all over the place. You can put your comments right there in the chat and I can see those. I got Mark. Hi, Mark. Hi, Sarah. Hi, Lance. 3 of my friends that showed up to watch the video. Now, starting with rule number 1 of the Nuremberg Code. Rule number 1 is rather lengthy. It's basically broken down. Well, there's a statement and then there's two lengthy paragraphs that kind of go into that statement. So the statement is the voluntary consent of the human subject is absolutely essential. Now, I want you to think about that for a second. The voluntary consent. Then under that, it says this means that the person involved should have legal capacity to give consent, should be so situated as to be able to exercise free power of choice without the intervention of any element of force, fraud, deceit, duress, overreaching, or other ulterior form of consent or coercion, and should have sufficient knowledge and comprehension of the elements of the subject matter involved as to enable him to make an understanding and enlightened decision. This latter element requires that before the acceptance of an affirmative decision by the experimental subject, there should be made known to him the nature, duration, and purpose of the experiment, the method and means by which it is to be conducted, all conveniences and hazards reasonably to be expected, and the effects upon his health or person which may possibly come from his participation in this experiment. Now, that's a pretty lengthy paragraph that basically says that yes, you need the voluntary consent of the subject that you're going to be experimenting on. That subject should be well informed. They need to be well informed in potential side effects. They need to be well informed as to what is the experiment about? What are you testing? How long is the experiment going to be? And all of this has to be done without fraud, force, deceit, duress, overreaching, or other ulterior form of constraint or coercion. Okay. Now, before I move on, now let's belay that. The last paragraph in item number one. This is all still rule number one of the Nuremberg Code. The final paragraph, the duty and responsibility for ascertaining the quality of the consent rests upon each individual who initiates, directs, or engages in the experiment. It is a personal duty and responsibility which may not be delegated to another with impunity. Okay. So whoever's doing the experiment, it is their responsibility to make sure that informed consent is achieved without coercion or duress or all the other things I already said. So what does this mean? Well, apparently in these United States, it doesn't mean much of anything when it comes to an experimental vaccine for COVID-19. See, none of the COVID-19 vaccines here in the United States have ever been approved thus far. So far, every every vaccine, mRNA jab, clot shot, whatever you want to call it, I don't care. Whatever you want to call that thing, they are all under emergency use authorization only. Now, what does that mean? Well, emergency use authorization authorizes the emergency use of an experimental drug or treatment. So, by definition, all of those mRNA products are experimental. Otherwise, they would either be approved or not approved. They're experimental because they use the emergency use authorization. So if they're experimental, then the Nuremberg Code applies, right? It's common sense, it's logic. It's what I try to do. I try to bring common sense and logic to whatever subject we're discussing. So, was the mRNA jab rollout, was it free of force, fraud, deceit, duress, overreaching, ulterior constraints, or coercion? Absolutely not. People were forced and or bribed. You remember we had companies that, well, you could get a free donut at Krispy Kreme, or you could get a free French fry at, I don't know, Five Guys or whatever. I don't remember what company it was. But you also had you have to do this or be fired. Both of those things, whether it's hey, get this free donut, or it's get this or lose your job. Both of those things are coercion. That's a violation of rule number 1 of the Nuremberg Code. But rule number 1 also spelled out that in order to make informed consent, voluntary consent, that you, as the person being experimented upon, well, you have to be known or made known of the duration and purpose of the experiment, the methods and means in which it will be conducted, and all inconveniences and hazards reasonably to be expected. Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't the jab rolled out without the little insert in the packaging that lists all the reasonably to be expected side effects? So again, violation of rule number 1 of the Nuremberg Code. Why? How? We, the people, allowed this to happen. Now, half of us were so afraid and so scared that, oh, they have a jab. Let's go get it. There's a pretty small percentage of us that immediately stood up and said, this is illegal. This is a violation of international standards. No, you shouldn't do this. Nobody should do this. This is scary. This is dangerous. But those of us that did that, well, we were shunned. We were silenced. We were mocked. We were ridiculed. I just read rule number 1. And our government and the companies that produce those shots violated rule number 1 in multiple ways. Clearly violated rule number 1 in multiple ways. But I'm getting way too serious already. So let's take a quick comedy break. Be back in about 60 seconds. I'm Peter Serafine with Serafine Hancock and Associates with a request from your local bar association. If you took the COVID-19 vaccine in 2020 or 2021 and suffered serious side effects, or if your loved one got the vaccine and then died, please stop calling attorneys. Your attorney can't help. You voluntarily took a vaccine under an emergency use authorization, which by definition is an experimental vaccine with absolutely no study of long-term side effects. Your fear drove you to make that decision without research. You accepted the risk and waived your right to sue. As much as your local law office would love to take your money and go after Big Pharma, we can't help you. Please stop calling. You're only wasting your time and ours. Serafine Hancock and Associates is not a real law firm, but you did take an experimental vaccine without any long-term studies. Good luck.
Mojo 50.
Jump back in. Comment from one of the video from the Facebook video stream. Sarah Nichols says, please share out the video on social media. Tell your friends and family about Republic Broadcasting Network. It's highly important to support free speech networks. And that is absolutely right. Thank you very much, Sarah. And with that, before we move on to Rule number 2, we got Glenn in Philadelphia on line 1. Welcome to the show, Glenn.
Yes, good evening, Peter.
Good evening, sir.
I just take a minute there to turn off my Bluetooth. Hi. First, one brief aside I wanted to mention. Your last name, Seraphine, apparently ends in the letter N. If it ended in the letter M, it would be like the Hebrew plural of the word seraph, which is a type of angel. You know, we've all heard of seraphim and seraphs. So apparently there's something angelic about your background. Just thought I'd mention that.
Well, before you move on, my name is Peter, after St. Peter. Angelo, the Italian word for angel. Seraphine, derivative of seraphim, as you just said. So I've always thought of it. I've always thought about it as you know, I'm going to hell because there's absolutely no way I can possibly live up to my name.
Well, that's the beautiful thing about believing in Jesus. That's a given, an assumption that we're not good enough. So you receive Jesus Christ as your personal Lord and Savior, and you don't have to be good enough. You have to be have to hear and respond.
Yep, so that's just my humor.
Yeah. Now the other reason I called, since you're starting to talk about the Nuremberg rules and all the research stuff, I just wanted to raise the obvious gimme on this whole topic.
Yeah, there's a bunch of
interesting. Yeah, well, the big one that popped into my mind was the Tuskegee study of untreated syphilis in black males,
right,
which went from 1932, which would have been before Nuremberg, to 1972, which is well after Nuremberg. So the U.S. was already very much embroiled in this. People get a little confused sometimes because of the name of the city, Tuskegee, and so they will have heard of the Tuskegee Airmen during World War II, which is a black
flyers, black pilots,
leaders and fighter pilots. Yeah. So that was depicted in the movie Red Tails, I believe, is a good one to look at that. So you don't want to muddy the waters about the Tuskegee Airmen versus the Tuskegee study of untreated syphilis in black males, which was highly ethical with or without Nuremberg, as far as I'm concerned. And plus, there have been numerous studies where the GIs, where enlisted people have been used. I mean, when detonating the atomic bombs in the desert and having them be subjected to the radiation and then checking the health effects, there's all sorts of things where the United States has failed to behave in an ethical and principled manner with such things.
I agree, especially when it comes to the military, because when you join the military, you sign so many papers, it's disgusting, and you basically sign over all of your rights. People,
right.
It's funny, they say, well, you don't give up any rights when you join the military, and that's a big pile of crap. Glenn, if you were to quit your job right now, if you decided that I'm not going to work ever, what's the absolute worst thing that can possibly happen to you as a civilian who quits their job?
Well, perhaps a civil lawsuit associated with something having to do with privacy issues or company intellectual property and stuff like that.
Yeah, maybe if you have a contract with them, they might sue you for breach of contract. Yeah, try that in the military. You don't show up for work, you end up in jail, fed bread and water.
AWOL.
Yeah.
Without leave, well, also have, people don't understand how very much different the Uniform Code of Military Justice. When you enlist, when you take a commission, you put yourself under the Uniform Code of Military Justice.
It's a little different.
And under the UCMJ, you can be guilty until proven innocent. So your civil rights are basically abrogated, so that you can go in and protect other people's rights.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Yeah,
and you are correct. We as a country, we have clearly and openly violated the Nuremberg Code for quite some time. I don't know how much you've actually researched the Tuskegee experiments of untreated syphilis, but A lot of people think that the government gave these men syphilis, and that's not true. At least not to my knowledge. What I've read and what I've in my research was that they went out and they found these men who already had syphilis, and they were
Mhm.
were following them and tracking them and tracing them and seeing how they progressed and all this kind of stuff. But 20 years into the study, it was discovered that penicillin cured syphilis.
Yeah, why? So we're right. The obvious question is, why would you not help to treat the people?
Right.
Exactly.
Once they discovered that, experiment should have been over. Those men should have all been treated.
Right.
But they didn't kill the experiment. They let it go on until I think it was, would you say 1972?
Yes, 32 to 72.
Yeah.
So it straddles the Nuremberg era.
Right. So okay, yeah. So let's do this. So we started it in 32. We had the Nuremberg Code developed. Then we discovered that penicillin cured syphilis. Now those two might be reversed. It might be one way or another. But either way, once one of those two things happened, whether the latter of the two, they should have been treated.
Well, for the same reason, they disallowed ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine during the pandemic, and
Right.
who knows
That's
what
actually
all these.
in the Nuremberg Code. Still, there's a point in there, which is why they were disallowed and ridiculed anything that was considered to be a treatment for COVID-19. That's in here too.
Right. And then when you look at the history of these vaccine stacks that are being imposed on children, and the burgeoning of autism and that we're seeing with all the stacked vaccines, is when somebody gives your kid an injection and hours later he's autistic, whereas previously he was meeting all the developmental milestones. Something's definitely rotten in Denmark.
Yeah, absolutely. Got to go, Glenn. Be back in about 3 minutes on the other side of this break. Thank you very much.
Did you know that essential oils have had a multitude of natural health and skin uses in history, but have been somewhat forgotten by recent civilization? Susanna's Secret offers 100% pure and natural oils at prices you can actually afford. Do you have a house or office with a musty smell or mold? Studies have shown that essential oils like the one in our Thief and Robbers blend will kill or inhibit mold, viruses, bacteria, and fungus. Just diffuse with it, and you will see the long-lasting effects that even synthetic chemicals don't achieve. Purifica, another one of our products used to clean and freshen your house or give a natural scent when drying laundry. For that special lady, we offer a ginger argan oil in a beautiful cosmetic bottle, or a pure argan oil, a natural acne fighting product. Check us out at susannasecret.com. That's SUSANAS secret.com. SUSANAS secret.com.
Here at Republic Broadcasting Network, we have been building our online store. Well, we have been focusing on bringing you the best talk show host in the country. Here at Republic Broadcasting Network, we also want our listeners to have products they can use every day and in times of emergency. We have added new products each week to our store. Your support of this network, plus products at the best prices, is a win-win situation. Check out our new store. Go to our website, republicbroadcasting.org, and click on the online store located at the top of our website. Together, we can continue to grow RBN and help our listeners prepare for the future. Go to republicbroadcasting.org and click on our online store or call us.
800-724-2719, extension 3. 800-724-2719, extension 3.
Hi, Tom Bolton for Ease Off. I know so many of you are finding our Easy 4 carcass drop and lift an essential tool for your meat processing operation. But today I want to spotlight 4 of our new products. First, our right height hog cradles with steel or aluminum frames. Our customers love this back-saving innovation that enhances sanitation and speeds production. Next, our beef cradles with stainless steel or aluminum frames eliminate rust and corrosion. We hope you'll compare our quality and prices for this essential part of your processing line. Our cradles are especially effective when used with our power skinner. And finally, our hook tumbler will keep your hooks clean and polished. EaseOff.com. We make pigs fly. Cows, too.
Ease Off LLC, 417-932-6419.
You're tuned in to the National Intel Report, the Real Talk Radio Show.
That's right. This is the National Intel Report on Republic Broadcasting Network. I'm Peter Serafine, your host, and as promised, our first guest of the evening, Mr. Brent Hamachek of Human Events. How you doing this evening, sir?
Couldn't be any better. I'm here, so I'm in a great place, right? I win.
Well, it's a great place to start. I was at your website, well, this morning, checking it out, looking at what was going on, and you've got I'll never forget what they did to us in the town where I grew up by Jack I can never say his name.
Prosovic.
I always try to say too fast, butcher it, but Jack Prosovic, that's like the big article at the top, on the top of the homepage. So, what's that about?
Jack covers a lot of ground. Folks will have to read it to get a sense, but he's our star. He's our star performer, big following. And, he hosts Human Events Daily on the Turning Point Network. And we work very closely with Turning Point and Charlie Kirk. We're proud of that. At Human Events Media Group, a lot of people still don't realize we don't just own Human Events. We also own the Post Millennial. So, and Jack's been working closely with the Post Millennial on breaking news stories for years, going back to even when he was with OAN. So, look, we're two different platforms with two different flavors. And we like to think at Human Events that we're a little bit more, we're more, in tune to doing some serious commentary on news and then opinion pieces. Post Millennial, known for breaking news, and they have been at the cold face of the culture war for the last 6 years. And so two really different types of platforms. I should add that Celine Ciccio runs the Human Events platform for us now and just does a wonderful job. She came to us from Campus Reform, and she's been doing great things ever since she came to us in May.
Cool. It's always nice to get a fresh set of eyes in there to shake things up just a little bit.
Yes, it is. And youthful, because as you can tell from my old tired eyes that that youth is not a virtue I any longer possess. But it's fun to be involved with the group. My contribution is occasional to the Human Events platform. I will occasionally write what I like to think is a thoughtful essay, and have contributed a number of those over time to the platform, and would certainly love it if your audience, if you go to the Human Events platform and you click on my picture, you don't have to look at me anymore. And I look better when you're reading what I write, and have written some serious pieces over time.
Well, Brian, what's going on with Human Events like right now? You guys were really big into the rallies that were running around the country there for a while. Weren't you highly involved in those, or was it just you following them?
So when you say the rallies, there's been a number of them. If you're slightly more specific with me, I can help.
Honestly, there's been so many, I forget the names of them all.
We try to cover things that are going on with, what I like to call the manufacturing floor of this thing that we call a movement. My background, just for your audience, is that I've had my own consulting practice for 23 years and business consulting. And I've been working with privately owned companies, really playing David against Goliath for those 23 years. And what I've learned over time is that in business, there's often a disconnect between the C-suite, the executives who get all the money and make all the decisions, and then the people who are actually down on the floor pumping out product. And the political translation to that is that in this thing that we call a movement, that is sometimes a bit more like a drunkard's walk, there are folks that are down on that manufacturing floor doing the blocking and tackling that needs to happen to push things forward. I've written quite a bit about, for example, the election integrity efforts that have gone on in the state of New Hampshire that date back to right after the 2020 election, and they continue right through yesterday or 2 days ago when legislation was introduced in the state, multiple pieces to address election integrity. Those folks that have been doing the work, the blocking and tackling work on the manufacturing floor in that state, have faced setback after setback after setback. And a lot of times they can't get help from just lawyers to file motions. They can't get coverage from the media. They can't get people to really look at them. And I'm not going to say Tucker Carlson's name because of Tucker. It's just a name people know. So someone of that stature, right, who's got that C-suite position within the movement, those kinds of people need to get more in touch with the people on the manufacturing floor, the people doing the real work, to do what people in C-suites do. They say, what do you need? Why do we have so much scrap? Why isn't product getting out on time? Why are the shipments late? Why is the quality down? And then tell them what they need. And those kinds of folks need to be helping those people. So we try to cover, and I try to write about things that are inside of the movement that are on that manufacturing floor to bring them to the attention of the C-suite so they can get some help.
Yeah. Not even as high up on as the chief executives there, but if you look at anything from an office, once you leave the production floor, once you're no longer hands-on in whatever the job is, and you become mid to upper level management and you're not there every day in the middle of it, there are so many things that don't make sense on paper. You're looking at an office and you're like, well, that seems stupid. Let's get rid of that. But if you were to actually be on the ground floor and you saw how things were happening and at the manufacturing level, that stroke of a pen that you just did just made 20 people's life infinitely harder. My full-time job is a mailman, and I constantly have people in our like regional office in Pittsburgh that decide, hey, we don't want to deliver to this street anymore. These people should never have gotten street delivery. They should have always had a PO box because they live in this little itty bitty tiny town. So we're going to cut them off.
Right.
But they didn't talk to me first, the guy who actually delivers the mail. The post office
Right.
won't cut off service to somebody who's getting service. So the whole idea is when this person moves out, the next person is cut off. What they didn't realize is on that street is 3 properties that are owned by an old folks home that are residential apartment buildings, basically, that are never going to be empty. So we're never going to be able to cut off that street. So somebody sitting in an office somewhere, stroke of a pen, just made everybody else that lives on that street angry because now they can't get mail.
Right. Well, and this is a real problem. And again, it translates perfectly into the political movement. One of the big problems we have on the team right side of things in America is that there is a disproportionate amount of emphasis and focus that's placed on elections. So everybody wants their candidate to get elected, and people with a lot of money. I had a conversation, by the way, just yesterday with a group with a ton of money and talking about some different sort of manufacturing floor initiatives. And they said, look, we're really just interested in spending money to try to impact the outcome of elections. This is the problem that we have on our side, and it's an enormous problem. We're wasting money and we're overvaluing elections.
Yeah.
Elections matter, but just think about it. Back in early 2017, so 6 short years ago, at this time, we had a brand new Republican president, House and Senate. And look where we are today. So you say, well, look at that. We had a clean sweep. We took all three houses, all three sections. What good did it do us? It did us very little. And to the extent that they did anything legislatively, it's all been undone. So, I mean, the First Step Act remains, and a really, really bad tax reform act remains. That's it. And there's nothing left of that election victory. In the meantime, the other folks, well, look what they've done. They control virtually every large municipal government in the country. They control the federal bureaucracy. They control the entertainment industry. They control the mainstream media. They control the educational industry, K through college, and they control most large corporate C-suites and boardrooms. So do you think they're obsessed about elections? Well, they pay attention to them, but they see them as a part of a whole. And we tend to see them as the whole of the moon. And that's a real problem. It's a problem with how we spend money, and it's a problem with how we focus.
It is. The other side, so to speak, figured out a long time ago how valuable the local stuff is. And our side, for some reason, has ignored it for decades. And, all politics is local. It, believe it or not, it flows from the bottom up. Not only is the guy that you elect to city council, more likely to go on to county and state level positions, but also it's the local government that can stand up and say no when the state and federal governments decide that they want to overreach. So, yeah, the other side figured that out a long time ago and took over pretty much all the local stuff. You mentioned the largest municipalities, and our side just let them. We didn't even try, really.
Right. Well, so part of it might be a little bit of a unintended consequence of cable news, and part of it might be a reflection a little bit of the fundamental difference between us. So the cable news piece, it used to be in the old days, when the old days, by the way, which we also call my youth, if you wanted the news, you sat down at 5:30 Central or 6:30 Eastern and whatever it was, and you watched Walter Cronkite, and that was 30 minutes, and then you were done. You either got a morning newspaper or an afternoon paper, or if you were affluent, you got both. That was your news. And a lot of that was local news, right, that you would get in the newspapers. Today, you have access to national news 24/7 from all sorts of outlets and on your handheld device all day long. So what does that do to people? Well, I think it makes local stuff boring, right? You just want to skip to the end, and the end is what's going on nationally. What's the big story, right? It's not what's going on with the local drainage commission. So I think the cable news has, unfortunately, to some extent, deglamorized and made it kind of boring and non-sexy to be involved in local politics. And the other part is this. You say, well, why wouldn't that happen to the other side too, just like us? And I think that goes back to the nature of our difference. So we tend to be individualists by nature, right? We're not really prone to want to take action. It's not what we do. We don't want to go out and pass laws and use government to do things. So we're inherently unmotivated about weaponizing the state. The other side is very motivated fundamentally by taking collective action. They want to use government as a weapon. So they'll pick up a weapon wherever they find it. It doesn't matter if it's at the federal level or the state level or in the local town hall. So perhaps an unintended consequence of cable news, perhaps a fundamental reflection on the difference between us and our nature.
I think that's a great example of one of the fundamental differences of the sides. I often use the free healthcare idea as the example to illustrate it. I have nothing against free healthcare. What my entire problem is with government healthcare. You want free healthcare? Fund organizations like the Shriners and St. Jude's and set up charity hospitals. The minute you get the government involved, you're giving them more control over your life. And we've all seen that, especially at the federal level, government doesn't do anything effectively or efficiently.
Right. Well, healthcare is such a great example. And when you hear people say that, well, look, the British system works well or the Canadian system works well, one of the things people lose track of is that the British system and the Canadian system have been around now for a very long time. So when something's been around for a long time and now, a couple or more generations have been living with it, their definition of what works well becomes focused on what it is they're inside of, right? So it works okay because it works the way it's supposed to, because it's what they become used to and what they were told to expect. To them, that works well. But there's a reason why world leaders all over Europe, when they get sick, they leave their country and they come here to get treated, because we're not fully socialized just yet. We're on our way, of course, in medicine, but we're not all the way there. And to the extent we're there now, we weren't there, say, 10, 15 years ago. So it's kind of like, yeah, everything's fine because this is all I've ever seen. And so we have to be aware sometimes when they're praising their system that it's because they might just not know any better.
Yeah, well, they clearly, if they think it's a great system, they don't know any better because their government is openly trying to get them to commit suicide and helping them through the process. What are they call it? The MAID, assisted death. I'm like, it's crazy that a government would ever encourage their citizens to die. We got a call.
Well,
Sarah in Oregon, welcome to the show.
Hi. Here's the thing about the discussion, about tonight's discussion. It's not just the vaccine. It's everything. Everything from telling us to get used to people saying she, her, him, he, him, they, them. If they don't, you get fired, ostracized. Heck, even a legal injunction gets filed against you for not accepting it. It's just insane.
It's all about control.
Right. Well,
Yep.
Bye, Sarah. Thanks for calling.
Bye, Sarah. Look, we saw during the pandemic not just how quickly we surrendered our liberty to government and bureaucrats and supposed experts. We saw that, but we saw something else that was even worse. We saw how quickly we were willing to turn on one another. Right. So this went from the United States to East Germany virtually overnight. And our FBI has turned into the Stasi. We have neighbors phoning in neighbors in the community where I live in the Chicago suburbs. At one point in the pandemic, a local officer said that 90% of the phone calls that were coming into the local police department were neighbor turning in neighbor. And so we really have to take a look here at our nature and what it is, not just that's being done to us. We have to take a look at what we were very quickly willing to do with each other. And this gift, this thing we were given when our nation was created and a constitution written, we're chipping away at that. Well, we're beyond chipping away at this point, right? And
Right.
So our nature's escaping, and we're finding ways to collectively take action against citizens. More importantly, we're starting to learn just how willing citizens are to take action against citizens. And so we should be afraid.
I was actually a little proud of the city of New York when
I can't wait to hear this.
yeah, this doesn't happen often.
No.
I think it was de Blasio had set up a text line where you could text in your COVID violation complaints and observations, like, Billy Bob's not wearing a mask and he's standing too
Right.
close to me and all this. So they set up a text line, and the text line was inundated with pictures of middle fingers and dick pics and just inappropriate messages and just like So it's the only time I can remember saying out loud that I'm proud of New York City.
Right. Well, certainly the people that were willing to do that, I'd agree with you. I'd be proud of them as well. But so again, where I live in the Chicago suburbs during the pandemic, we had mayors going onto social media encouraging citizens to turn in their neighbor, and we had Facebook groups that formed where people were being encouraged. If your next door neighbor is having a gathering in their backyard, take a picture and post it here. So
Mhm.
this is what we were seeing, and we think that because the pandemic has gone away, we think, well, maybe that behavior will go away. But does behavior go away? Behavior might go away, but that might be because the opportunity doesn't exist to present it. I don't think that people changed back overnight. In fact, I think that during the pandemic, we just simply saw what people are. It gave them a chance to show it. And this is one of the reasons why the 2022 election wasn't any big surprise, at least not to me, and why I wrote about it that way. Because everybody was thinking, well, look at what's happened in the last couple of years. Certainly people are going to rebel against this. And my thought was, why would they? It's been well over 100 years in the making. This is just part of a progression. So why would people suddenly abandon it? So collectivism is here to stay. The battle's going to be long, and none of this is going to turn around anytime soon.
That's exactly what our problem is. It's individualism, which, the foundation of our country, the first and only nation ever founded on the concept of individualism
Mhm.
versus collectivism, which is
That's
basically
right.
everybody else in the world.
That's exactly right. Those are the terms I use. So I have to say it's exactly right, or I'd be disagreeing with myself. That's not good. I'd be in inner conflict and turmoil.
All right, Brent, before we go, I want to make sure you have a chance to plug all your stuff. So we got humanevents.com and
All right. Yeah, there's a bunch of ands. So first of all, I'd like to plug, if you will, the book that I co-wrote with the late Dr. Vladimir Zelenko. That is out. It's called Zelenko: How to Decapitate the Serpent. Zev loves snakes and serpents. And that book can be found at zelenkobook.com. And if you purchase a copy, you will be benefiting then the next thing I'll plug, which is the Zelenko Freedom Foundation, because I have assigned the copyright to the book and all my royalties in the book to the foundation. So every dime goes to Zev's foundation to carry on his work, his message, and preserve his legacy. So zelenkobook.com. It's also available at Amazon. Amazon didn't take it down. I get asked all the time. They've been very, very good to us, and so we appreciate that. And then the Zelenko Foundation, where I happen to be a board member, is doing great work. Kevin Phillips and Ann Vandersteel are the co-chair people of the foundation. Just two real absolute warriors in the medical freedom movement. And so support the foundation, buy the book. And then the last thing I'll plug is a program that put together with my dear friend and partner, Felissa Blazek, called Common Ground Campus. You can see it in the banner behind me. And Common Ground Campus is something we've done now at several schools. We've got a bunch coming up in the spring. What we do is we go onto a college or high school campus, and we have the students tell us what issues are divisive on their campus. We get a couple of kids from each side of that issue, and we sit down and we do not debate the issue. We have kids articulate what they think the problems are, have the other side ask them questions. We go back and forth, and we find a way to find common ground on those issues that students on both sides, upon which they can both agree. And then we have a pizza party afterwards. So these are the kinds of things.
Awesome.
It is awesome. And your audience, if they went to commongroundcampus.com and took a look at what we were doing, I'd really appreciate that. And it's a funded initiative, and we're always looking for additional funding. So you can help us either by finding a school or finding your wallet or somebody else's wallet. That's even better. But look, if we're going to fight for the country, we have to know who we're fighting against or pushing against. And we also have to know who we have to attract or who we have to pull in. So there's a push and a pull to this. Most people focus on one or the other. And my great mission in my later golden years here is to try to focus on both. So I'm involved in the push. That's why I wrote Zev's book with him. And I'm involved in the pull. And that's what Common Ground Campus is all about. So also like to mention, I do a weekly show with my dear friend Tamara Lee called Trend On. And that we do that on Rumble. And it's a lot of fun. And everybody loves Tamara. So she gets great guests. And you can follow us there. So there are all the places you can find me if anybody's desperate enough to look.
Well, thank you very much. You can also find you back here once a month. Appreciate that.
Yes.
Your commitment to do that. And when you come to Penn State for Common Ground Campus, I only live like 8 miles away. I'd love to be involved when you get to Penn State to do that.
Well, here's your mission between this month and next one. See if you can help us open a door at Penn State, and we'll give you a front row seat.
I don't know about 1 month. It might take me a little longer, and that's a big organization.
You can take your time.
You can also help the Zelenko Freedom Foundation by going to zstacklife.com and remember to use the code Lighthouse, and that helps me out as well as helping out the Zelenko Freedom Foundation. zstacklife.com, code Lighthouse. I used Zelenko's protocol when I had COVID. I went up on his website and pulled it up, and then when my 84-year-old grandmother got sick with COVID, I took it to her. Nobel Prize for it. Yeah.
Let me share a live in the moment story with you about the Zelenko protocol. Here's what people don't talk about enough, but I'm going to talk about it right now. So your audience probably can't tell that I have a very, very slight cold. It's day 2 of a cold. That's when they start to get worse. I actually felt worse last night than I do today, because yesterday when I started to get that cold, I tripled in 3 times in a day instead of twice my intake of quercetin, zinc, and vitamin C. And so instead of my cold getting worse from the start, it got better, and now it's essentially gone. This is, wait for it, the 6th time I've started to get a cold in the last 2 years. All 6 of them died in the crib. So I take the Zelenko protocol of quercetin, zinc, and vitamin C every single day. And when I start to get a virus, because you do, I increase that dosage. And what happens? Here I am. I haven't sneezed once during your show, and I think I'm probably pretty clear sounding. And I owe that to my late friend. The protocol kills the coronavirus in the cell while it's developing and multiplying. That's why it's effective. And so, this disease was always treatable. We make a great case for it in the book. Urge your audience to buy the book. I'm told it's a very good read. I'm not allowed to say that because I wrote it, but the comments have been very kind and flattering. So buy the book, buy one for a friend, and buy one for your local library and donate it.
Well, Dr. Zelenko, I was in the process of working on having him come on the show as a guest right when he turned ill. So I didn't have that privilege, but I've seen him do a lot of interviews, and he was a very interesting and energetic man, and surely going to be missed. But
yes, he will.
Thank you very much, Brent. The time is up. We've got to go to a commercial break. So check out Brent Hamachek stuff and check him out next month when he comes back here. After this break, when we come back, we got Dave Sumrall. So 3 minutes. See you then.
We must take America back. When you clear the schools and more things made in USA. It's the least we can do for the red, white, and blue. We must take America back. We must take America back.
Extendivite really works. Here's just a few testimonials from Amazon. RL, 5 stars. Been taking this for 2 months now. I feel better, have more energy. April, My husband started taking Extendivite, and he said he feels much better and has more energy. EW. Need to try. Everyone needs this for their health. Great product, great people. Josie. It works great. This product has made my blood pressure and cholesterol stable. I highly recommend it. JC. Great product. Has worked well these last few years. To get your Extendivite today, go to extendivite.com. That's XTENDOVITE.com or call us at 1-877-928-8822.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
Hello, I'm Dr. Leonard Horowitz. I was right 30 years ago in warning the world about threatening lab virus outbreaks, AIDS, and Ebola. I was right 20 years ago when FBI Director Robert Mueller made me a suspect in the anthrax mailings because I warned the Bureau before the CIA's biocrime and Cipro sales psyops happened. I was right about COVID-19 being an AIDS-laced mutagen planned to resurge this fall to excuse officials' profitable depopulation globalization agendas. And I was right about the only safeguards being antioxidants and holy spiritual sustenance. Vitamin C, D, zinc, chlorophyll, oxygen, and oxysilver especially transmits the frequency resonance to neutralize the expanded function bioweapon. Oxysilver is a double superconductor of the healing power of love. It is the first nutraceutical invented to amplify prayer power and the faithful, loving intention of your heart. Buy, try, and stockpile Oxysilver through healthyworldstore.com.
In times like these, you can't depend on the government to keep you warm and fed, but you can depend on the Vermont Bun Baker to do just that. With the Vermont Bun Baker, you'll never be in a situation where you can't cook, bake, fry, boil water, or heat your home, all at the same time. One of the most revolutionary cook stoves, wood stoves ever, the Vermont Bun Baker is available with or without soapstone veneer, a natural stone that retains heat and radiates it back into the room once the fire is out. A beautiful addition to your home. The Vermont Bun Baker has an efficiency rating well above 75% and qualifies for the wood stove tax credit. For more information, watch the Vermont Bun Baker on YouTube and live stream or visit us at www.vermontwoodstove.com. You can also reach us by calling 1-866-SOAPSTONE. Don't ever be hungry or cold because the power's gone out. With a Vermont Bun Baker, all you have to worry about is what's for dinner.
You're listening to Republic Broadcasting Network because you can handle the truth.
The American dream has become a nightmare. Signs of the time are on cardboard on corners in town. Like a cancer that's silently spreading, there's an unspoken fear. We're on our way down. We must seek America.
No, I never get the timing of that right. I obviously did not take music lessons or anything like that, but it's the top of the second hour here at the National Intel Report live on Republic Broadcasting Network, Liberty Lighthouse on Mojo 50 Radio and Patriot Nation Radio Network. Please remember that free speech is not free. Support these free speech networks or you won't hear them anymore. You know what? I'm just going to say it. Free speech networks are falling left and right. They're dying off. They're running out of money. They're running out of support. They're just keeling over dead. And it's voices that you're not going to hear anymore. So if you like the one that you're listening to now, go to their website, hit the donate button, call them and donate something, buy their merchandise, use their sponsors, help them out. And as promised, now we have returning to the show for the second time, Mr. Dave Sumrall from StopHate.com. Hopefully he has some fabulous updates, some happy updates about our J6 political prisoner friends.
Man, I tell you, it's good to see you again, and I hope to do this again. I'm sorry I don't have more good tidings of great joy, but we're having a couple of issues with this new house or whatever you want to call it. and they're not being very friendly to J6ers right now. There's a lot of controversy in our community that I think people need to be aware about as well, because we don't feel like we're being represented at all. Speaker McCarthy said today that he felt like the officer that shot Ashley Babbitt was doing his job, and that does not bode well for the morale of us who know better, that know the real situation behind Ashley Babbitt and her actions. And then we have the president, which gave us some good news this week. They did kind of announce through another article that Roseanne Boyland was not a drug overdose death. He actually retweeted one, I believe, from the Gateway Pundit that showed Roseanne Boyland another video of her getting CPR. We had put another angle of that out a couple of 3 or 4 months ago in a Heroes of January 6th video we did. And it seems like the president finally got wind that he was making a statement that wasn't true when he said Ashley was the only one that was killed on January 6th. If you remember, the media had said, Roseanne was a drug overdose and Kevin and Greason were natural causes, but we know that's not the case either.
Roseanne Boyland is a name that needs to be shouted from the rooftops, and it needs to be talked about on every free speech platform out there. And I mean, put it in letters to the editor. It needs to get out there, especially since those new released videos that show, the cops dragging her down the hallway like she's a hunk of meat.
Yeah.
And oh God.
Yeah.
It was terrible. I mean, she was clearly beaten to death by cops.
Well, and see, that's another thing, that they're these controversial issues. You say one thing, they do another. They say one thing, you have to kind of try to regroup. So one of the things is the time of death. Nobody was taking her pulse at that exact moment, and it could have been the spray that she was choking to death that moment. It could have been the stick that Lila Morris was swinging that took the very last bit of life out of her body. That's up for the real investigators, the real coroners, the same coroner that weighed in on all the January 6th deaths is the same guy that weighed in on the George Floyd case after the George Floyd coroner from his state said that it was a drug overdose and the cop didn't do it. This other coroner from DC weighed in and had that changed. He has enough power to say you were wrong. It was death by cop. It wasn't drugs. The same coroner that ruled that Roseanne was a drug overdose, when that video looks nothing like a drug overdose.
I've never seen a baton used in a drug overdose.
No. So the way I'm trying to approach this with people and give them calls to action is to say, contact your people and ask them, have you seen the video of Roseanne Boyland? Can you agree that that's not a drug overdose? Will you file it as a murder? Will you report it? Or do you want to be held responsible for knowing about a felony and not reporting it to the authorities? Because when we report it to them, it's their duty to report it to someone else. If they don't, we have them in jail for 3 years. That's just the way it is. 18 U.S. Code subsection 4. And I'm ready to play that with the people on our side, their side, any side, because any of those sides is not the people's side, which are really the ones that are after the truth. That's just the way it goes.
Roseanne Boyland, unlike George Floyd, was beaten to death by police.
Isn't that strange?
Clearly on video.
Mm-hmm.
It really can't be doubted, argued, questioned, or debated. It's blatantly clear. And like I said at the beginning, that's a name that we need to scream from the rooftops, because I don't think anybody knows who Roseanne Boyland is. And we need to scream that name just to get people to say, what are you talking about?
That's right. That's right. Just put some doubt on it and just say to our representatives, look, if there's a shadow of a doubt that she didn't die of a drug overdose, look, that looks like it's manslaughter to me in one form or another, whether they meant to kill her or not. Someone actually killed her, and it's not a drug overdose. And if they looked at the footage of Kevin Greason, same thing, but they won't. And that's the thing, when the people are saying, if there's a doubt, you have to dig deeper, you have to go further into it. And if McCarthy hasn't seen the homework that we've done around the Ashley Babbitt scene, he shouldn't make uneducated statements either, because it hurts the people. It hurts Ashley's family. It hurts everyone that's involved in January 6th, because it gives more credit to the other side that we might have done something wrong. And these police were justified in what's been deemed objectively reasonable violence. And I'm telling you, as an investigator who can see this footage from the government, right? when you see all these different body cams from the police of the Roseanne Boylan death, and you hear her scream, and you watch her kick her feet, and you hear the men all around begging the police to stop. You're killing her. Please stop. Effing stop. Please stop. Luke Coffey with a crutch, Jake Lang jumping in. All these guys that are in jail or facing jail because they witnessed this brutal attack by the police on peaceful protesters. That's the whole thing. That's the cover up. That's the collusion. And listen, Jake Lang's case has been put off till 2024, probably because he has so much to do with Roseanne's death there, the whole scene, and tried to save her life. So they don't want that in court until they have plenty of convictions for trespass, for waving a flag. And they say, well, but we might have made a little mistake on this death, but we've already got 500 people that say they were bad guys. And that's the pressure. That's the George Floyd knee on the neck pressure that the J6ers are suffering through.
The entire J6 thing is just disgusting. It's un-American. All of these people should have had their day in court a year ago.
Yeah.
And it's just completely un-American. And there's a lot of people out there that don't even realize that there are this many people still in prison who still haven't seen a day in court. It's pathetic.
Well,
I want to.
That's it. Go ahead.
I am anxiously awaiting the arrival of my copy of the American Gulag Chronicles. I ordered it after your appearance on the show last time.
Yes.
And it's not here yet, but I'm anxiously waiting for it.
And I apologize to you from the bottom of my heart, man.
No worries,
We jumped into this whole thing as someone who was eagerly searching for a publisher, someone to help us get this book out. And I'm telling you, it's the saddest thing. Nobody really wanted to help with that endeavor, as would anyone. You'd think all these patriots would step up, and want to really help us with that, but they didn't. So we tried, of course, the self-publish and the self-ship, and that's been a nightmare. So we immediately switched over to a company. Everyone should be getting their copies really soon. I hope you got an email explaining some of that stuff. We tried to send an ebook out so people could at least get a good preview of that, but
I didn't notice that.
What's that?
If I did, I didn't notice the ebook version. I'd love, yeah. But yeah, American Gulag Chronicles. Since I brought it up so that you could tell the listeners what it is again.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like something completely awesome. And while you tell them, I'm gonna look and see if I got that email.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, American Gulag Chronicles. Literally, the subtitle is "Letters from Prison," and these are the letters from the J6 people who are still being held before their trials. Okay, so when I say that, it's due process has not been served. They haven't been convicted of anything. They're still waiting for their trial to be convicted. And they've been sitting languishing in the DC Gulag. There's several other prisons around the country that they've been held at. There's almost 100 people that are still being held. Over 900 have been charged. Probably over 300 have taken pleas to try to get out from under this governmental attack on the people. And the stories, we're seeing the judges, the attorneys. There's very few good attorneys. The public defenders seem to be absolutely working with the government, with the judges to seek their pound of flesh. But these stories from prison give a different version than the media is going to tell you, than the judges or the attorneys. They're just not letting their information get out. And this book does that from their own hand and with their own, pictures from jail. It's an amazing book. It's an amazing collection of pain and torture in so many ways, to hear what they experienced, what their intent was that day. Did you go to overthrow the government? And what did you see? What happened around you? What was it like to have your home raided by the FBI, throw flashbangs around your house for your neighbors to experience the shock and awe? These are the things in the letters. And, the call my family for me, because I can't, when these guys sat in jail the first 2 years, 0 visitation, no family touch, no video conferencing with them, none of that. Solitary confinement for the most part. The food issues, the cold and the hot, the things that they turn the lights on in the middle, the torturous things, all in this book. And the beautiful thing about it, it not only gets your stories out, but it is the fundraiser of choice right now, in my opinion, because 100% of the funds go to help these prisoners and their families. It's all volunteer board. And we're just trying to do that 2-part, man, get their story out and help them raise funds, help them stay alive. and get them through this.
Some of the parts of that you just kind of glossed over. Okay, so you said about solitary confinement. They're still under like COVID restrictions.
Yeah,
Insane.
if you see your lawyer, if you want to have a meeting with your counsel, then afterwards they say, okay, since you're not vaccinated, you have to go back in the hole for another 2 weeks, 14 days, get you in quarantine, all under the guise of some big COVID mysterious thing. But these guys don't want to get the vaccine, right? So here's what happens. For the first year, they weren't allowed to cut their hair, shave, trim their fingernails or toenails. They didn't have access to that. They've had no access to religious services. Now, one of the congressmen the other day, Troy Nels, went to the jail. He got the big tour. He had the mayor show up and the warden from the prison, and they rolled out the red carpet for him. And he said the place smelled totally like bleach. It was burning his eyes. What does that tell you? They just cleaned it up. But he did talk to them about visitation. He got them visitation at least for a week. And then, of course, they got eggs one morning. They'd never had that for 2 years for breakfast. It's just horrendous. And, I do tend to gloss over some of the things that I've said for 2 years over and over and over. And it's like,
right.
We'll hit the highlights and hope that people want to learn more. But it's been hard for these guys. They feel like the Vietnam vets, just
one of the things I heard was, there are calorie requirements for their meals. And like they have to have X number of calories. So I heard that they're given like giant pieces of cake with every meal just to get to the calorie line.
Well, that's the thing. Most of the food's really not that edible. I mean, and look, prison is prison. You're not going to get steak and caviar for dinner. I get that. But when you get mystery foods or foods that are heavily smelling of either urine or chemicals or feces, I mean, they've found pubic hair in their food. They've seen it all. They've done it. They've got mold on their apples. We've got pictures that they were able to smuggle out of some of the food, and it's horrendous. But on top of that, I understand, prison may have to have some bad food, but what they're doing is trying to survive more off the commissary, which, is another just scam of the system, man. They make so much money off of these people by charging these really high rates for honey buns and ramen noodles and the things that these guys trust to put in their body, because, and they know that it's not been peed in or spit in or worse. And that's the thing. So we've been trying to, direct traffic, I guess, in lack of a better way, to help support these guys with the commissary funds as well.
That's a good idea. I mean, at least, ramen noodles and honey buns, they're clearly not the healthiest food choices, but yeah, they know they're still sealed and safe.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, these guys, so they're gaining weight. You would expect prisoners to lose weight, but it's the sodium and it's the sugar and it's surviving on those things that aren't good for you. But it's not the proteins. It's hard to get protein. They want to soften these guys up and take that out of their diet pretty much, and everything's been supplemented with some soy something. And that's not good for health, especially these guys that have medical issues that are in there that aren't getting medical treatment. They're not getting to see a doctor. They've got broken fingers. They've got, hurt shoulders. One guy lost vision in his eye from a police beating a guard. They attacked him, had him cuffed. And these are the stories, man. And it's like really sad that people don't understand the gravity of the situation, because these aren't bad people. Now, if they were all the worst of MAGA and they were all in there and we're like, well, these are the bad guys and they're kind of getting, they used to beat a lot of, these aren't those people. These people have no criminal history, no record of doing anything bad. A lot of these people have never had a speeding ticket. Look, I can't even say that, right? But they're sitting here in prison for us. And then we tell people, look, they're coming for you next. And they say, well, we're not insurrection. We didn't do that. We're not violent. We didn't hurt a cop. Well, we didn't either. Y'all have been lied to. Yep. But the deal is, then they go to their school board meeting and they say, we don't like CRT. And then the FBI is banging on their door. Hey, you're the same boat we're in, just in a different part of it, but we're all in the same boat. And people need to wake up to that.
Yeah. And some of those people you said, we didn't hurt cops. Well, some of those people are in jail because they tried to help the cops, which is absolutely crazy.
Yeah. I put a video.
We got Sherry in Kansas on line one. Welcome to the show, Sherry.
Hey, has Amnesty International expressed any interest in getting in?
No, not a bit. Not one
And
bit.
I guess I don't have to ask about the ACLU.
No. The ACLU, Anti-Defamation League, none of these people want to get involved. We've even got some people that are Jewish, we can't get any help for anybody of any race or creed or religion or background or anything if they went to DC on January 6th. So, yeah, that's a good question. I wish that we could get some attention from some of those folks.
Yeah. I mean,
Use your strings,
God, it's just-
Sherry. You reach out to those people and get them involved for us.
yeah, they go all around the world,
That's right. That's right. We'll get some people together, make some phone calls for us, and call them up.
I've got another question. How did the DC police, the feds, how did they get the ability to come in after people had left Washington, D.C.? I mean, to me, they have no jurisdiction to go and arrest those people.
Well, you know what? You're smarter than a lot of attorneys are, because they don't understand that the FBI does not have the ability to do what they've been doing. They've been literally kidnapping people from their states. A lot of that, Sherry, we look for the local sheriffs, the constitutionally elected local sheriffs, to really step in and protect their people. And they're not doing it either. So some of these phone calls to these organizations and these sheriff's departments and say, what are you going to do if they come for us? They've already taken the J6ers. If I speak out against my government, will you defend me against the FBI if they come to arrest me? Because I'm innocent too. And that's a great question.
It really is a great question. And I've said ever since I gotten involved in politics at all, I pretty quickly realized and came to the conclusion that your local county sheriff is probably the most important elected position in the entire government of our country.
That's right.
And there's so many reasons, because if Joe Biden gets to sign a bill ban or even an executive order and tries to ban the AR-15 or assault weapons, they don't have the manpower at the federal level to go house to house and collect them. They're going to want your county sheriff to do it. So you need to have a county sheriff that's going to say, F you, I'm not doing that.
That's right. You better make sure, because they're doing this differently than they used to. And this elected sheriff is what's important and constitutional. So yeah, we're trying to explore with a couple of the big name sheriffs to see what the holdup is, because honestly, a lot of people fell for the whole line in the beginning and didn't know that they should be defending us, and they're still catching up to that whole game. So we're still on that path, hopefully soon.
Well, it's definitely the first thing when somebody's running for sheriff or trying to get reelected as sheriff. You should confront them and say, are you going to let the feds come in for anything, any federal agency? And,
Sure.
If they don't really blast it out there that this guy is not going to protect our country.
That's right. Hey, Sherry, I got a real quick question for you, or a good thing for you to ask them, I guess. A good question for you to ask. When people are running for office like that, ask them how many kids were abducted out of their county last year. How many children? Because if they don't keep up with the children's numbers, they're definitely not going to keep up with anything else. And that should be one of the priorities. It's a good way to keep the heat on them and make them know what we're concerned about, and that's the safety of our children, the future. And with so many things going on in that realm, that's also a good question for you. Hey, it's been great to talk to you, Sherry.
I've got one more thing. Did you know that there are no, as long as people are, a registered to vote as a United States citizen, there is no locally elected people. And it was, it's a deal in a American Law Review. It's the 185 volume, and the article is Fed 155 in the ALR 185 volume. The other designation to get to the article is Fed 155.
All right, I'm going to look that up because I don't know what you're talking about, but I will look it up. Thank you very much, Sherry. Got to move on.
Bye.
One of the questions I always ask anybody who's asking me for my vote is, what's the purpose of government? And if they don't answer with the quote from the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson saying, listing our unalienable rights and saying that the purpose of government, to protect these rights, governments are instituted among men. If they don't quote the Declaration of Independence when I ask them why we have government at all, then they're not my guy.
That's right. That's a great point, man. If they don't quote it, they don't know it. They need to know it.
They don't know it.
Represent us.
Hey, moving on. We got Mike in Kentucky on line 3. Mike, welcome to the show.
Yeah, after I started reading my own Bible, I thought, man, it is kind of arrogant for these people to swear an oath to the Constitution and protect and uphold and defend it from all enemies, foreign and domestic, and they probably don't have much of it memorized. I mean, I've got Schoolhouse Rock's preamble.
Right.
So if everybody remembers that,
Love it.
And what's his name? Mike Rivero plays that pretty regularly as a music bridge, a version of it.
Hey, hold on just a second. Wait. This is one of my favorite things.
Like Thomas Paine once wrote, it's only common sense that if a government won't give you your basic rights, you better get another government.
That's right.
There are a bunch of really good parodies of Schoolhouse Rock, and I posted them on the Facebook page for Republic Broadcasting Network. There's a guy, and in reference to the last caller, there's a guy or two on RBN that is advocating for that, for people who send affidavits of fact to their Secretary of State for the state in which they were born or where they live. I hesitate to use the word reside. But Thomas Jefferson helped to write and draft the first 2 Kentucky constitutions for the Commonwealth of Kentucky, which, here's a break.
Yep, I was just going to say, we're coming up to a break.
Point.
Hey, you're allowed. You're welcome to stick around. We'll get back to you on the other side. Dave, same with you. I know I only booked you for the half hour, but if you're bored and want to stick around, you can. I was talking before you came on about the Nuremberg Code.
Yes, very important. Very important
and fun stuff. But it is just about break time. So Mike in Kentucky, hold on. Dave, if you want to, you can. But I didn't get my little sponsor break in here. So let's say right to Bear Insurance. If you own a firearm, go to protectwithbear.com. Use the code Lighthouse to save yourself 10%, which is only fat fingers. Hey, the code Lighthouse will save you 10%, which is basically like getting you a free month at protectwithbear.com.
Foreclosure judgments, the sale of property, and evictions after the sale. We are not attorneys, and we don't give legal advice. We are a professional team of legal researchers, providing forensic mortgage audits and expert witnesses. We have the knowledge to produce the evidence and enforce laws regarding your legal issues. We've been in business for 12 years without a complaint. Consultations are free, and we provide a free title search to confirm if your mortgage has legal defects. Please call 855-253-3748. 855, 2, keep it today.
My name is John. I'm the founder of Blackout Coffee, and I started Blackout because I really love coffee. I've always loved coffee, and after traveling so much to Europe, South America, and trying so many different coffees that were so good, and every time I came back to the U.S., I was so disappointed with the coffee, so I figured that I had to do something about it. The biggest difference is on the beans and the roasting process, how we roast it, and how fresh it is. The fresher the roast, the better the quality. Here I have all of the coffee. It's roasted within 1 to 2 days prior to being shipped. So it literally gets to consumers' house within 3 to 5 days after being roasted. If you like coffee, you have to try ours. It's fresh roasted. It's one of the best beans that we can get, and you will definitely see the difference.
Visit blackoutcoffee.com and use the coupon code REPUB10. That's REPUB10.
Standing 6'4", weighing in 245 pounds of crime-fighting, political science analyzing brawn. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Patrick Slattery.
So, Mike, get off this anti-cicada agenda.
I'm a born-again traditional Christian, and my favorite possessions are right here on my nightstand. That would be the King James Bible and my .357 revolver.
I'd rather be rolled by Chinamen than dudes.
Cool it with the anti-Semitic remarks, right?
Just because you steal an election and terminate the republic doesn't mean you terminate the people in the republic, because we're still here.
I'm not taking the vaccine. You, Bill Gates.
There was a way forward still on January 6th. What needed to be done is to object to every single state.
The COVID-19 virus was the setup. The vaccine could very well be a bioweapon.
The Patrick and Jeremy Show, Tuesday at 9 Central and Wednesday at 1 Central.
You're tuned in to the National Intel Report, the real talk radio show, only on the Republic Broadcasting Network.
That's right. This is the National Intel Report. I am Peter Serafine, your Thursday host. I got David Sumrall with us longer than expected. Thank you for sticking around, David. We got Mike from Kentucky on the phone. Mike, feel free to continue.
Well, before I get to that, are you related to Pat Sumrall at all, or any of the other famous Sumralls?
Well, yeah, I think a little more on the Lester side. Lester Sumrall, we spell it the same. Pat is supposedly some kind of distant relative. You know how families change the spelling through the years. It's crazy.
Well, and a lot of people changed the spelling as they came through, immigrated from other countries. But
That's right.
What I was getting at is Thomas Jefferson wrote big portions or heavily influenced the Kentucky Constitution. And it also works back to the Virginia Constitution for the Commonwealth of Virginia. But, they changed it without authorization or authority to do so in 1850. And there's a curious section X, for the letter 10 or chi, whatever in Greek. And it has a nice paragraph in there. It says that the powers that we have delegated, we declare that this is not to be, it's outside the scope and power of the government. And you get the impression, the way it's worded, that even the duped masses in a mobocracy can't change it. Well, in that section is a provision that says there can be no law forbidding the immigration to and from the state. So what I think they've done with reference to the last caller is they've tricked us into not being a party to our state constitutions across this country because of that very clause, and get you to immigrate out of your state to become a U.S. citizen, under the 14th Amendment. It was called before FDR the New Deal. It was actually called a New Deal. And I still have a firm offer of a silver dollar plus maybe a Franklin half dollar. If somebody can get me my 7th and 8th grade American government book, it was beige colored with a fake cloth. And I was nerdy enough to read the Constitution and stuff in the back in the late 70s, early 80s, whenever that was, when I was in the 7th and 8th grade. The same book, it did not have the 4th paragraph to the 14th Amendment, which says the national debt shall not be questioned, and especially in the cases of insurrection. So what an economic incentive to foment insurrection, because then you could borrow as much as you want to supplant that. And they've infiltrated just about every political group that I've ever heard of, been a part of, for decades. I've heard there's something close to 800,000 people in the 48 states and Alaska and Hawaii that are have classified status. So how many of those people on January 6th were actually operatives or agents, provocateurs that were infiltrating those groups? And, we know there's a famous video of one that says, for 2 days he's going, "We've got to go into the Capitol," provoking the crowd to go in. Right? Now, that guy's never been indicted. There's all these unindicted co-conspirators too, right?
Was it Ray Epps that was given immunity to go to testify in front of the J6 committee? Come on.
But the thing is, these guys could have been operatives in other undercover operations, and they went there on their own because they're arch Democrats or status quo, never Trumpers. And so they go there, even though their handler says, "Oh, well, I'm not telling you, you can't go," And they go there on their own accord, but they can't be touched because they know something about a pending investigation somewhere else. So they're off the hook. I mean, how many of those do we wonder about? And they if they don't have a security clearance, their handler does, right? So they can't talk about why. They can't even talk about why they're not being indicted, but yet they were there as a provocateur, like those two sons of the Air Force guy from Utah who lost his career over the high-speed circuits that were sent to Japan over Jeep parts or some crap. One of them was a conservative. The other boy was arrested in Utah for unrelated incidents to do with Antifa. And his brother was like calling the FBI saying, "My brother's part of this, he's planning something." And he tried to warn him because they were meeting, I think, around the statue or the Washington Monument on the other end of the mall. And then he's got a camera woman filming him going in there with a knife saying, "Let's cut this bleep up," has he ever been charged, or is he still in state of Utah prison, right? Because he was involved in some Antifa agitation over there. So it's a convoluted mess. And my personal efforts with proof of some of the electronic harassment and dirty tricks on social media, and goes back to the phones, I've not been able to find a lawyer, going from Larry claiming both of William Benny's lawyers, including Larry Klayman, and the guy that the legacy law firm for Randy Weaver. I've tried to contact all kinds of activists. The Electronic Frontier Foundation has turned me down 3 times, even though their case was thrown out 3 times. And the last time, Joe versus NSA, was thrown out in upstate New York, they said, the judge says, "You've got to prove damage from the government's Section 702 activity." Well, I've got several victims that can prove damage. The Electronic Frontier Foundation, they don't want nothing. They don't want nothing to do with me. We don't have the bandwidth to handle your case. William Benny said, his lawyer from Nashville, Tennessee, said, "I can't practice law in Kentucky." And I said, "Well, don't you need any affidavits or a friend of the court brief or something that supports your Pennsylvania case? Because I got evidence." "I can't practice law in Kentucky." How lame of an excuse does that sound like? How many of these whistleblowers are just steam valves, or they've been compromised to be essentially steam valves to make it look like something's being done, and it ain't? Send us your donation.
Well, one of the things that I guess hopeful is a good word. One of the things I've noticed recently is some recent poll shows that a majority of Americans don't trust the FBI anymore. It was like 65% or something like that. Which funny, okay, so that's hopeful that it's finally reached a majority. But anybody who has ever looked into the history of the FBI realizes that the FBI they were created for the purpose of spying on American citizens. So why would anybody trust?
It also includes intelligence. They're both intelligence and criminal investigation. That's what people don't realize. They're domestic intelligence, like a police state, like East Germany. But
like the Stasi.
I'm hopeful. I've had people actually accuse me of being an optimist because they say, "Mike, you're not going to make any difference." And I'm not giving up. I'm going to be a thorn in their side to my last breath, because I'm tired of the hypocrisy. They stand there in front of the cameras and they swear their oath to the Constitution. They don't do a damn thing about it. It's the most arrogant thing I've ever seen. And my Lord said, "Swear not at all." My Lord said, "Swear not at all." It's pretty damn arrogant. All right, I'll let you go.
Keep up the good fight. I got to say, about once a year, I get hit with this. Am I making a difference? I've been doing this show now for, I don't know, 4 years, 5 years. I don't know. If you look at my like social media followings or anything like that, I'm a nobody. And I have to wonder, like, am I making a difference? I'm not making enough money to make a difference. Am I reaching enough people to make a difference? And that actually hit me about earlier this week. I thought, man, is it really worth it for me to do this every stinking week? But hey, I'm still here. send me a message. Go to my website and just say, "Hi, yeah, I like you," whatever. Just, give me a little encouragement, will you, people? Anyway, before Dave came on and before Brent came on, before we had our guest joining us, I was talking about the Nuremberg Code. And I only got to number 1 out of 10 of the rules of the Nuremberg Code. We've only got like 20 minutes left in the show. I'm probably not going to get through all 10, but I'm going to keep trying. So number 2 from the Nuremberg Code of the, Nazi war crime trials. Number 2, regarding experimentations on human subjects, number 1 was informed consent without coercion and all that kind of stuff. Very long worded, very well encompassing. You can't have experiments if you tricked or coerced people into doing them. Number 2 is the experiment should be such as to yield fruitful results for the good of society, unapproachable by other means of study, and not random and unnecessary in nature. You brought up Dr. Zeb Zelenko and his no, that wasn't you. That was Brent.
Yeah.
That was the previous guest.
Brent.
Brought up Dr. Zeb Zelenko and the Zelenko protocols and how he had amazing results treating COVID-19 patients.
Oh, he absolutely did. Tamara is a good friend of mine. Brent's a good friend of mine. And listen, I've been watching the Dr. Z thing. It's an amazing story to know that there are other ways to treat these things, that the government doesn't own every single idea.
Right.
It's amazing.
But you go back to the wording of number 2 here.
Uh-huh.
Yield fruitful results for the good of society, unapproachable by other means or methods. So wait,
Yeah.
if there's a treatment, we don't need this experiment now, do we?
Depends on what they're trying to find out. What's the gain? I mean, if they're trying to find out how to take the opponent out and how to torture them in the most horrific ways, then maybe the J6 thing, they wouldn't get in trouble for it. Depends on what their goal is.
Good point. But step 1 said they had to spell out their goal.
Mm.
They didn't do that.
Exactly.
Oh, and here I'll look up a comment on the Facebook page. Peter, you aren't a nobody. You're worth a lot. Damn it. I'm not trying to get. Oh, that was nice. That's Sarah. Sarah's got to be my biggest friend, but she likes you too.
I like Sarah. Sarah
David's a great guest. He's brilliant as hell. Thank you very much, Sarah.
That's so sweet. Thank you, Sarah. That's very nice. Yeah. Wait till you hear us talk more about this Nuremberg Code thing.
Moving on. Number 3. So item number 3 of 10 of the Nuremberg Code says that the experiment should be so designed and based on the results of animal experimentation and a knowledge of the nature and history of the disease or other problem of study that the anticipated results will justify the performance of the experiment.
That's scary.
Hold on a second. You have to have animal trials first? Were there animal trials of the mRNA vaccines? Because last I heard, every time, what was the mRNA company that had never not fought, Moderna.
Oh, Moderna, yeah. Never had
Had never produced a vaccine.
Mhm.
And anytime that they ever took one of their mRNA products to animal trials, it killed the animals.
Yeah, all the ferrets died. I put a meme out that had a ferret and it said, "I survived the COVID trials," and they never tagged it for fake news.
So human experiments are supposed to be based on animal experiments.
Yeah.
But in the animal experiments of the COVID jab, all the animals died.
Mm-hmm.
So why did we do human experiments? And by human experiments, I mean emergency use authorization.
Mm-hmm. So bad.
Yeah. Number 4, the experiment should be so conducted as, sorry, I read ahead and laughed a little bit. Number 4, the experiment should be so conducted as to avoid all unnecessary physical and mental suffering and injury. Take this or you lose your job. Take this or you can't ever go to a concert again. Take this and we'll give you free French fries.
Wow. Can't travel.
Yeah,
do
can't
anything.
travel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that passport? Yeah, that's useless now.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is we're on, number 4. And as far as common sense tells me, our federal government violated items 1 through 4 of the Nuremberg Code.
100% so far.
That's not something that you want to be 100% on.
No, it's not. Perfect score. What do you know?
Look, I'm batting 1,000.
Yeah.
Number 5, rule number 5 of the Nuremberg Code on human medical trials. No experiment should be conducted where there is an appropriate reason to believe that death or disabling injury will occur, except perhaps in those experiments where the experimental physicians also serve as subjects. So this is saying,
oh wow,
that if death or disabling injury is a reasonably predictable outcome of your experiment, you should probably do the experiment on yourself.
In addition to everyone else. You gotta go ahead and do yourself if you're gonna do everybody. Yeah, it's bad. That's bad. That's real bad.
All right, so no experiment should be conducted where there is a priority. I don't know, it's a weird word. Reason to believe that the death or disabling injury will occur. What was the vaccine a couple of years ago? Like 6 people died in the VAERS database and they yanked the vaccine off the market.
I remember. Well, look at J&J. They had a couple of things in the COVID deal in the very beginning. They pulled it. Now, they didn't change anything. They just waited a couple of days and started it back up again. They didn't change anything. They just put it on the shelf and said, no, wait, some people died. Give it a break.
Add a little food coloring to it. No, it's new.
It's all new stuff. All new.
It's blue now.
Oh, that's great. That's it.
Oh, wow.
I can see the little drawings, the little art of the fake cells changing from green to blue to red.
So, I don't know, if all of your animals died in the couple of animal experiments that you had, I would think that there would be reason to believe that death or disabling injury would occur.
Yeah.
Again, rule number 5 was broken pretty openly and clearly by basic common sense. You don't need to be a doctor to read these rules.
It's pretty simple. It's pretty self-explanatory. How many rules are there?
10.
Oh, and we're halfway
through, and we've failed the first 5.
They could get the rest of them right and still be a miserable failure.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Let's see what Fred in Michigan has to say about it. Line 1, welcome to the show, Fred.
Hey there. Relative to 6 January and the incarcerated innocents, they're wasting away there because they were lured and beguiled and then treasonously abandoned by none other than the Donald Trump. The Donald Trump is ultimately culpable. It easily could have taken executive action on the last day. I'm positive he knew the imminent outcome. Okay, so that was all a cleverly crafted political subterfuge psyop. Okay, and relative to the Federated Bolshevik International, FBI,
I like that.
Federated Bolshevik International. There is a big time professor at UCal Berkeley, Trevor Aronson, author of The Terror Factory, Inside the FBI's Manufactured War on Terror, The Terror Factory. And he put up like 100,000 or more in a reward for any FBI agent in any venue to take him to court relative to that book and all the data that incriminates the Federated Bolshevik International. And that was like 6 years ago. And there have been no takers. The reason that agency has legal authority to go into the states is because, number one, all the states are corporate political subsidiaries of the United States Federal Corporation. The Federal Charter, U.S. Constitution, is in fact the bylaws of a corporate entity called United States. And that's why we, the people, capitalize. That's why United States is capitalized. That's why Article 1, Section 8, Clause 2, the infamous one-liner, I describe it, borrow money on the credit of the United States. Now, let's see, that's what, 1787, right? So credit existed. United States had a credit rating in 1787, eh?
Well, yeah. I mean, they didn't exactly have the
And who are they
rating
going to
system that
borrow?
we have now.
Who are they going to borrow the money from? Well, Alexander Levine Hamilton would tell you, well, my buddy, at the Bank of England, the Patterson family, the Rothschild family. It's been that way ever since. Everything's a totally perverse, goddamn, kosher certified Talmudic Kabbalah, Frankenstein slime, soap opera, psyop. Okay, the best thing anybody can do en masse is to abandon all political parties. Do not vote. Why do you think they have this big time get out the vote? Be sure to be registered every cycle, because if they don't get a certain quota, I think it's 20% of the populace to be registered, they have to shut down. But more importantly, the Federal Reserve Act was not validly enacted. The legal quorum that is absolutely necessary, etched in stone, 12 U.S. senators voting unanimously, is not a valid legal quorum. The Federal Reserve Act is null and void on that basis. And also, according to their own damn charter, they have violated every mandated duty, fiduciary obligation and duty. They violated every one of them, okay? So if those people that are being incarcerated and brutally treated, if somebody could get to them and get a recording or get them to sign an affidavit, I am not a United States citizen resident. I've never been a United States citizen resident. I am a U.S. national. The people to go to regarding all this is Mike Gaddy. He's on Saturday afternoons, only for an hour. He ought to be on every night in the 8 o'clock Central Time slot, Monday through Friday. Okay? Forget about that joke that's on there.
Right. Don't badmouth other shows.
I'm sorry. I have to do it. Okay. Okay. All right. So you get in touch with what's the guy's name? Roger Sales. He's totally intimately competent in the U.S. national affidavit process. And there's a woman, Lauren in Ohio, who used to be on RBN. She has a direct connection to a guy, Kelby Smith, who's an absolute ace an absolute A scholar on the subject of the U.S. national process. By virtue of that, they could get them all out of there. It's absolute certainty. They cannot ignore their affidavit of a U.S. national status, even under those conditions. Okay? That's what has to be focused on. They're being held, what do they call it? A misprison of felon, I think is, look, Schumer and all the rest, this is criminal coercion. It's domestic terrorism. And the guy that's got that all nailed down is David Martin, PhD, University of Virginia. You can find him on BitChute. The first one was, let's see, what was it? COVID-19 Treasonous Acts. He runs through the United States Code and the Patriot Act and cites everything regarding criminal coercion and domestic terrorism, which all the governors, the entire CDC, NIH, etc., they're all guilty of that. They all deserve to be either beheaded or imprisoned the rest of their life and lose all their worldly assets. Okay? And then he gave one.
Wait, you've jumped topics so many. I can't keep up with you. You talked about the Federal Reserve and the U.S. Nationals and COVID. You're bouncing around way too much.
Yeah, well, it's all interconnected. The FedRes, Talmudic Kabbalah, Frankenstein pirates. They're behind it all. Just like they're the ones that command the World Economic Forum, okay, and CFR. Hillary Clintonista publicly stated that it's a CFR just down the street that commands everything they do, directs everything they do at the State Department. So, yeah, I'm all over the map because it's all interconnected. And the only people that have
but you're not taking enough time to explain the interconnections, and it doesn't make the greatest of radio. If you can't spell out every individual connection, and we've got less than 3 minutes left, we don't have time for that tonight. Thanks for your call. And I will say that the one thing that I absolutely, without reservation, without research, without anything, agree with is the Federal Reserve Act passing in the middle of the night on Christmas Eve with 12 senators. No. Even if they had a quorum that morning, they didn't have it by the time it passed. Moving on back to the Nuremberg Code, less than 2 minutes now. Number 6, the degree of risk to be taken should never exceed that determined by the humanitarian importance of the problem to be solved by the experiment. Hey, wait a minute. COVID-19 had a 98% survival rate. So the amount of risk involved in whatever experiment, i.e. emergency use drug, should be extremely small.
Oh, listen, man, that was really scary to think that it was survivable unless you go to the hospital. That's where they got their stats. If they hook you up to the remdesivir, you're going down. That's all there is to it. And that's what happened, sadly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Proper preparation should be made and adequate facilities provided to protect the experimental subjects against even the remotest possibilities of injury, disability, or death. Yeah. How do you do that when you jabbed everybody? Anyway, it's the end of the show. We're out of time. I got pages of notes I didn't get to. Oh, man. If you're listening live on Republic Broadcasting Network, stay tuned for The Edge of Darkness with Jeffrey Bennett. Thank you to our guests for joining us this evening. Thank you to Mike, the producer. Can't do the show without you. Thank you, the listeners and callers. You're why we do this. Until next week, protect your liberties. Once they're gone, there's no getting them back. God bless America.
We must take America.